Hey, it's Edward Stevens with the Stevens Group at Reese Nichols. Today we're going to talk about a very fun topic. It's regarding leases. So this is a really interesting topic. I love anytime we can get creative when we're doing a purchase or we're doing a sale, when like it gets multifaceted. We blend renting and buying together, because usually when you can master or you can put together several different facets and put a deal together, it's going to work out in your favor. So what we want to talk about today are some best practices from the buying side. Buying a home that has a tenant, or and then we're going to talk about on the sale side some best practices for selling a home that has a tenant. Now, you can apply these principles to, a much larger property. Let's say, a fourplex, for example, 4-unit property or a 3-unit property or something bigger. But what I want to talk about, for the purposes of this discussion, I want to try to gear it toward you, the homeowner, the non-professional real estate investor, the person who maybe became an accidental landlord. Maybe you had to move across the country to take a new job. You rented your home out, you have a tenant in there, and maybe you don't know everything that there is to know about being a landlord. You're not interested in becoming a professional landlord, but you want to kind of understand that aspect of it. Or maybe you are somebody who's in the market right now looking to buy a home. You're not trying to become a landlord either, but you're just trying to buy a home. You're just trying to become a homeowner. So let's talk about it from first the buying side. Let's say you are a potential buyer. You're out in the market right now searching, and it's a difficult time, especially with it being the spring, and with interest rates not really having any real effect on people's willingness to buy. It's getting competitive out there. Let's be honest. The market is tough for people wanting to buy those move-in ready homes in those great neighborhoods, in those excellent school districts, in those appreciating areas. It's difficult sometimes to find exactly what you want. So one of the reasons why it's important for you to understand buying a home with a tenant in it is because once you do, you have an unfair advantage over other buyers who don't understand that, and other agents who don't understand that. There becomes a whole other market out there of homes that can be bought, that maybe your competition doesn't know can be bought. You can buy a home that is rented to somebody else. Okay, so let's just put that out there as number one. You can do it. You just have to go about it in the right way. So obviously, if you have more of a selection to choose from, because you're now adding to the normal selection of homes that you see on the MLS and Zillow, those other homes that are rented, you're going to have more of a selection. You're going to have an easier time finding exactly what you want. Also, when you buy a home that's rented, you usually get a little bit better price on it. And we're going to talk about just why that is now. Sometimes people will sell a home that has a tenant in there, and it's not exactly staged. It's not exactly ready to be sold from a marketing perspective. Maybe the agent has had a rough go with the tenant that's inside of the home, trying to get the home ready, trying to do photography and trying to do staging and that sort of thing. You're basically in somebody else's home and they don't want you to be there. So you're going to be able to negotiate a little bit better price, because you're probably not going to be in a bidding war on a home like that, because it just isn't usually marketed in the same way that other homes are on the market that are maybe vacant or the owner lives there. And finally, the reason why it's important to you as a buyer to be able to learn how to do this is because you are tapping into usually homes that have motivated sellers. If the seller has their property on the market and there's a tenant in there, usually they have a damn good reason for putting that home on the market. It could be that there's an eviction in process. It could be that the seller has to liquidate the property because of some health issue that the seller's going through, or the seller just has to get the hell out of Dodge and they need to get that property sold. Because it's usually not an ideal time to put the home on the market. It makes you wonder, why wouldn't they just wait until the tenant's out of here? They probably have a really good reason, and they may be very, very motivated to get rid of the property. So now let's talk about how you can do this, how you can actually accomplish this as a buyer. How can you actually pull this off, buying a home that's got a tenant in there? Some of the best practices, okay? So, and this helps a lot if you have a real estate agent to be able to help you through this process. Getting a buyer's agent involved is very helpful. Somebody that knows how to do this. The first thing you want to do is you want to get a copy of the lease. It's best practice to read the lease, read it in its entirety, and to look it over with your real estate agent. Now, you may not get the lease until after you're under contract. It's not an ideal thing to have to wait that long, but there are times when I've had to wait to get a lease, and that's fine. You can do that. You can wait. You'll have a period of due diligence where you're doing your inspections on the property, you're getting insurance on the property, you're figuring out things about that property. As part of that, you're going to get the lease. Okay? You want to read that lease, and there are going to be many things you're going to look for. We're not going to go through all of them in this video, but one of the most important things is, when is that tenant leaving? When is that person going to be out of there so that you can get in? Because at least in this video, we're talking about homes that you can buy so you can go and move into them. So you need to know that. You need to read the lease, and you need to understand when they're supposed to be out. Number two is you want to get an estoppel. This is a document that a lot of people don't talk about, a lot of real estate agents don't know about. What you need to do is you need to get in writing what you understand the tenant, you need to get in writing what the tenant understands to be the case regarding the lease. What contract is there between the tenant and the current owner? You don't want to be caught off guard when you buy a home and the tenant's in there and the tenant says, well, the landlord promised they would fix this. The landlord gave me a break on my rent because of X, Y, and Z. The landlord said that that doesn't apply. You don't want to step into a situation where the lease that you read is not exactly what the tenant believes the lease is. So you need to get an estoppel. And an estoppel is just a fancy word for, what do you as the tenant believe that the lease agreement is, and then the landlord needs to sign off on that. Landlord is the owner. So that way, there's no question after you buy the home what agreement's currently in place. And this is where I'll stop for a second and say that the agreement that's in place is the agreement that's in place. It conveys with the home. So when you buy that home, the tenant doesn't just get kicked out. They have a lease. That lease stays with the home, and they're protected. So you need to respect that as the owner, as the new owner coming in. You don't just get to kick people out of their house. That would be total anarchy. The next thing, the third thing is, as a best practice as a buyer, is you want to make sure that there's an accounting done of that security deposit. Most of the time, tenants will have a security deposit that they will turn in whenever they first rent the home. And it sometimes just mysteriously disappears when you close and you become the new owner. It's like, where did that security deposit go? If you don't keep your eye on the P, it will go underneath a shell, and then you will lose track of it. And then you'll be like, hey, wait a minute. And you'll remember that you didn't get the security deposit later when the tenant is moving out and they're asking you for the security deposit. And then you're going, well, wait a minute, I didn't get a security deposit. I should probably call the previous owner. And then they're not answering your calls. And then you've been had. You got scammed. So you don't want to get scammed. You want to make sure that there's accounting of that security deposit, that it gets transferred from the owner to you at closing so that you can keep it for the tenant. And if the tenant does a good job with the property and they move out, then you can give the security deposit back to them. And the final best practice that I would say to use is that if you're buying a home to live in and you're getting a loan, you're getting a mortgage, and there's a tenant inside, that's totally cool. I know it sounds so off the wall, it seems kind of clunky, but let's say you found the perfect home, but it's currently rented. You can still get a loan, and you can still get the kind of loan that is not an investment loan. You can get like an owner-occupied loan. You can tell the lender and tell everybody, I'm going to move in there. And your lender will give you the interest rate of a owner-occupant. Owner-occupied loans get usually a little bit better interest rate than if you're buying the home as an investment property. A lot of times you don't have to put as much money down. There's just more favorable terms on your loan when you're getting it for you to live in. So you can do all that, but there's a rule that your lender usually wants you to follow, which is that you have to be moving into that property within 60 days of closing. Keep that in mind when you're putting your offer together. Now, if, let's say there's 90 days left on the lease, you might decide you want to close in 30 days or in 31 days. And that way you can move in 59 days from that, or whatever the math is on that. You can move in before that 60-day window closes. The lender is interested in you moving into that property within 60 days. If you don't do that, it's kind of a bad thing because you've committed to do that on the loan documents that you signed at closing. So no need to lie there. Just make sure that you time out and write your offer accordingly. And you have to be able to accomplish that. If you can't accomplish that because of some unforeseen thing, like let's say something crazy happens, I don't know, you get hospitalized or you lose your job or you get drafted or whatever, there are certain exceptions to the rule, but as a general rule, you have to be able to get in there within 60 days. I think because of the length of this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it into two sections. We're going to talk about the seller side of this, the other side of the coin, in the next video. So I'm going to go ahead and end the video here, and then stay tuned for part 2. And I know that it's probably helpful for, if not you, then somebody that you know, to get the information that you saw in this video. So make sure to share the video, and maybe there's somebody in your network that's going through their home search right now that will see this video, and it'll help them find a better home option. So please share. Edward Stevens with the Stevens Group at Reese Nichols. Look forward to seeing you one day at the closing table.